This is the Patrick E. McLean podcast, and today, it's Memorial Day. Every year, Memorial Day comes and goes, and every year I feel like I should say this thing, and every year I don't. It's a thing I've said in private conversations, but somehow the morass of social media seemed the wrong place to post it. But my hope is speaking about this, people will be able to hear the tone of my voice and will make it less likely to be misconstrued. So the idea of Memorial Day is certainly older than a federal holiday. It seems that the practice began in the United States, decorating soldiers' graves, before the Civil War, actually. But it's pretty clear that after 600,000 Americans died in the Civil War, Decoration Day, or Memorial Day, as it came to be known, became a widespread practice. Now, it's worth taking a second to consider that in 1860, 600,000 people was 2% of the population. If you extrapolate those to numbers today, we have a population of about 291 million, and 2% of that is 6 million. That's more than 6 times the population of the city I live in, Charlotte, North Carolina, more than L.A. or Chicago, in fact. It's the combined populations of Charlotte, San Francisco, Fort Worth, Jacksonville, Austin, Columbus, and Indianapolis. But here's the problem with numbers like 2% of the population. There's really no making sense of them. As everyone's least favorite Uncle Joe, Stalin, said, kill one person and it's a tragedy, kill a million and it's a statistic. And the same thing happens with veterans and their struggles and tragedies. They become public statistics and then we can't really make sense out of them. But behind the numbers are shattered families and orphaned children. And the question we should all ask on Memorial Day is it worth it? Right now, there are threats of war against Venezuela, North Korea, Syria, and Iran on a daily basis, repeated lots of places. And of course, trade war has a nasty habit of turning into shooting war, one way or another. And as one of my favorite economic journalists, Frederick Bastiat, once wrote, when goods don't cross borders, soldiers will. It's also hard for me to see how all the blood and money wasted in Afghanistan and Iraq can be classified as any kind of success. As Sun Tzu wrote in 500 BC, there has never been a protracted war from which a country has benefited. The war in Afghanistan is 18 years old. I mean, if the conflict was a person, it would be old enough to vote. So this Memorial Day, I can't hold back. I say the best way to honor fallen veterans is not to make any more of them, or as few as you can. And the second best way is to enjoy summer to the hilt, because that's certainly what they would have done if given the chance. But I don't think we should mess up the order of those two things. And if we have to make more heroes, then we should make damn sure it's worth it. It used to be that the left was very clearly anti-war, and sadly I don't see that anymore. But a great comment to come out of the anti-war movement was that no congressperson should be able to vote for war unless they're willing to send their own kids. I've done martial arts for going on 25 years now, and a number of years ago I was teaching Aikido. We had an affiliated dojo at Camp Lejeune. The instructor down there was a guy named Roger, and when he started the club, he didn't have a black belt, but he was a very dedicated student, and when it came time for him to test, they put on a seminar down there. An excellent instructor, very experienced, named Dennis Hooker, himself a Vietnam vet, came up from Florida and taught the whole weekend. It was excellent seminar. A bunch of us came down from Charlotte, and really people came from all over to support Roger and the group. And I got to tell you, we had a great time. For whatever reason, the intersection of marine and traditional Japanese martial arts was just a sweet spot. Those guys were the best. They were welcoming, hospitable, kind, fun, just great in every way. And for me, it was a bonus that when you ask an 18-year-old Marine to punch you in the face, they will really try and do it. Now that's good training. So as we were rolling up the mats in the gym after the seminar, 2 of the Marines are standing on this mat and rolling it backwards towards them, kind of pulling it with this awkward motion. And one of them says, this might work better if we got on the other side and pushed. And in an instant, one of the higher ranking guys, himself an engineer, on the total other side of the room just bellows out, "Work smarter, not harder. What kind of Marines are you?" They were magnificent guys. But 2 months later, that entire dojo was gone. They were all deployed. Now that's what they signed up for. And those brave, crazy sons of bitches were eager for it on multiple levels, I'm sure. But I have to ask myself, are we sure we have foreign policy objectives that are worth any one of those people's lives? I mean, are we even sure we have coherent foreign policy objectives right now? Because there's a real cost to these decisions. It can be argued, even by me, that my view is too idealistic. Won't work in the real world. But it's fine, because an ideal is something you always fall short of. But if the ideal isn't very clearly stated, if the ideal isn't let's not make any more dead veterans, then how are we going to get ourselves out of the messes that we're in? And I don't want to underestimate the complexity of these messes. In fact, the best counterargument for my idealism, I think, comes from Pericles, himself a general and statesman of Athens during the very First World War, the Peloponnesian War. When the people of Athens started making complaining noises about war and its cost in about 425 BC, Pericles said, basically, face it, we've got control of the world, and the only thing more dangerous than having that is letting it go. All right, that's too depressing of a note to end on. So another Marine story. So on that trip, we had with us a VP of a large bank, and she asked one of the Marine commanders what it was like managing Marines. And the commander said, you just have to set your expectations right. You get your right baseline. And I do that by remembering this one rule of thumb. If you give a Marine 3 ball bearings, he's going to break one, lose one, and get the third one pregnant. Needless to say, we all had a very good laugh. But a few years later, while walking down the sidewalk, I looked down and there is a single ball bearing sitting in a crack. So I picked it up and said, they've been looking for you. And I've got good news. You're an uncle.